Afternoon, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to our program this afternoon. Um, it is our Food Safety for Food Entrepreneurs series that you are attending. Today we will be focusing on cleaning and sanitizing. Next slide. We would also like to remind you of our last program in this series. This topic will be food labeling. That will be on November 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or 12 p.m. Central Time. And to give you just a little bit about us, here's this is the group that is called the Central Food Safety Extension Network. And we began with a small representation from the central region of the United States. Since our creation, we have grown into include more states, and we have a total of about 12 at this point. And we have 12 extension educators that we all focus on food safety. Next slide. And just in case you are not familiar with the Zoom webinar format, here are some instructions that we would like you to use if you have a question. At the bottom of your screen, there are two buttons. One is a chat function, and that allows you to communicate with us if you choose to make a comment. The second one at the bottom of your screen is the one we would like you to use for all questions. This helps us to keep track of any questions you may have, just to make sure that we are able to answer all of them. And this part of our format, if you have any issues with sound, please do a sound check. It's at the bottom of your screen. There's a little microphone. You can click on that little arrow and find out what system in your computer or tablet or whatever you're using to watch this can tell you if your sound is working or not. So if you have any other questions, you can actually call that number at the top, and they can help you through that technical difficulty. And to start things off, we have a poll question. So we're going to have a few of these, and these are where you get to actually communicate with us through answering these questions. So this one's a true and false poll. There's a difference between cleaning and sanitizing. It's just, we can only pick one, true or false. Can they, is it working, Stacy?
Yep, it's working
Okay.
fine. We have
Yep, we can
about,
see it.
yep,
Okay.
about 80 participants have participated.
Okay. I can't see that on my side. So how many participants did we have percentage-wise?
We had about 85 participants participate, and they all have the same response of true.
They are correct. It is true. There is a difference between cleaning and sanitizing. Do you want to put that next slide up, Shannon? Yep. So true. You guys are going to be an easy crowd if we only have to talk about this kind of stuff, because cleaning and sanitizing do have a difference, and we're going to learn about those differences in just a little bit. So next slide.
All right, it's my turn. So I'm Shannon Coleman, Associate Professor and State Extension Specialist at Iowa State University. And so I am tasked with going through cleaning with the group. And although the terms cleaning and sanitize may be used interchangeably, they are defined differently. The definition of clean is to physically remove debris and soil from the equipment and surfaces with the use of water. Detergent is also used during this cleaning process. All right, so we're gonna do another poll. So We often get questions from participants about what, with the definition of cleaning and sanitation. The next question we get, how often should someone clean and sanitize? And so we want to hear from y'all. So our next question is, how often should you clean? And that is, the responses are before each production, after each production, more frequently when needed, or all of the above. And so I can see the poll on my end, so I can help out with this with you, Karen. And about 73% so far has responded. So we're gonna give some people a little bit more time to respond. All right, let's close up shop, Stacy, and share the results. All right, so out of the responses, we have 4% with who just selected before each production, and majority of the group responded with all of the above. And you are correct. The correct response is all of the above. Thank you, Stacy. Best practices when setting up your own standard operation of cleaning is to set up saying, make sure that you do it before, make sure that you do it often, and if there's some incidents that it happens in between time. So we'll talk a little bit about it more in the next slide. So the frequency of cleaning must be clearly defined at your facility, and that is how you set it up and how you define it. This includes, but not limited to, before and after production day. Also considering after an allergen change, and then more frequently when needed. For example, in meat and dairy processing, there is a daily clean to get rid of soil and allergens that can be used for bacteria growth. All right, so looking at the different types of cleaning system, there are 3 different kinds we're going to talk about today. One type is clean in place, and that's an automatic cleaning system that is within your system. So last spring, when we were developing a workshop series for online, we went down to our pilot plant, and he was able to show us the clean in place system that was in the actual equipment itself. There is minimum dismantling or moving before cleaning because the system is already built within the system. And so the next one is clean out of place, which involves moving and removing food production equipment and tools in designated external area and doing the actual cleaning, sanitizing, and drying. And then the last is environmental cleaning, which involves cleaning, but sometimes not associated with food contact surfaces and equipment. So it's more of a swabbing system. So depending on the type of production facility you have, whether it's wet or dry, this will differ as far as the cleaning process, but in general, in a main equipment part facility, there is a steps that include the preparation of the equipment, looking at the mechanical processing of equipment, looking at heat processing, looking at your food preservation equipment, packaging, and many others. These are some of the equipments that you want to think about when you're cleaning in your operation. I'm passing it over to you, Karen.
Okay, so shown here is an example of a food contact surface, and it's down like in the bottom of a big pan or a washing system. The arrow points to that inside of that mixer. Actually, it is a mixer, which is immediate food contact surface. So that means the food is directly on that surface. And it is the inner part of a machine. So that's where you're going to have to probably either it has an enclosed system or you'll have to take it apart and wash each piece. Wash, clean, and sanitize each piece of that system. Next slide. So, surfaces that need to be cleaned. Listed here are some examples of food contact surfaces that should be regularly cleaned, and they include things like equipment surfaces, preparation areas such as tables, any tabletops, countertops, things like that. Also conveyors. If there's conveyors that move the product along, then that needs to be cleaned at a regular basis also. Bins and totes that carry the product, packaging materials, utensils, and listed here are examples of non-food contact surfaces. So those were our food contact surfaces, and now our non-food contact surface would possibly be things like your personal hygiene, floors, drains, walls, light fixtures. And it is important to note that what type of food contact or non-contact surface it is, as the type of cleaner that you will depend on to use. So depending on what that surface is, whether it's food contact or not, depends on the kind of cleaner that you will be using. Sanitation standard operating procedures will have to have a step-by-step instructions that would for the type of detergent and that type of sanitizer that you're going to be using for your particular facility, which is going to be individual to what you do, what you have in your facility, and so it would be specific to you. Sanitation of food contact and non-food contact surfaces will be discussed more in depth a little bit later in our program. So one of the processes, a wet cleaning process. A wet processing facility consists of food product that is made with water, such as a dairy processing facility that would have to be washed down. The methods used in wet cleaning usually consists of manual, foam, gel, clean in place, and clean out of place at times. So you'd be taking it apart. Wet cleaning must follow several steps of procedures, including things like a pre-clean, a pre-rinse, washing, post-rinsing, inspection, and then after all the cleaning, sanitation. When the surfaces are cleaned and sanitized, they must be dried to reduce the chance of microorganisms growing. Otherwise, that dampness will provide a perfect growing environment for bacteria. And then the dry cleaning process. The wet and dry cleaning process will differ, as a low moisture product being produced will not be wet cleaned. Water can affect the quality of the product. For example, if it is a confectionery product, it would kind of melt it. So tools used to dry cleaning include things like a vacuum, scrapers, brushes, alcohol wipes. During this process, the residue is removed through the mechanical or physical action of scrubbing or wiping. Dry cleaning is important in the control of environmental pathogens such as salmonella. The control of environmental pathogens is a concern when dry cleaning, as it may be easier for pathogens and other contaminants to spread. And we have another poll question, and this is once again a true or false question. Can you sanitize before you clean a food contact surface?
All right, Stacy has launched the poll. All right, we got competition going on this go round.
Oh, good. It's always exciting when there's a little bit going on there.
All right, and it's whether we want to know whether it's a true or false.
Right. You can only choose one.
So there are about 72 participants who have participated, 72%. So I'm going to give a few more seconds to let some others try to at least reach 80. We got about 80.
80%. Good. I like that participation, and thank you for participating in our polls. We like to keep you a little engaged.
All right, 86. All right, Stacy, let's go ahead and close it.
Okay, so we have 25% say true and 75% say false, and the answer is false. Can you sanitize before you clean a food contact surface? Nope, we need to clean that surface first and then we sanitize with whatever's specific for our facility. And now I'm going to hand it back over to Shannon.
All right, back to me. So thank you, Stacy, and thank you, participants. After appropriately cleaning surfaces and equipment, it is now time to sanitize it. So the definition of sanitizing is to treat the surface with a chemical sanitizer to reduce or destroy microorganisms from contaminating the surface. Your food contact surfaces areas cannot be considered sanitized until it's been adequately cleaned. A chemical sanitizer will not work on a dirty surface. It will just attach to the dirt. As far as sanitation systems, along with cleaning systems, there are different types of sanitation systems. There's the thermal, which uses hot water or steam for a specific time at a specific temperature, or as we talked about before, chemical sanitizers, where you use approved food grade sanitizers that are at a specific concentration based on the instructions from the manufacturer, as far as how do you apply the sanitizer and contact time. You want to make sure that you you pay close attention to that. And so we'll talk a little bit more about approved sanitizers coming up in the presentation a little bit later. All right, more information about sanitation and food contact surfaces. All food contact surfaces, including equipment, any equipment that the food come in contact with during production, processing, and packaging must be sanitized. And so when we talk about food contact surfaces, we're talking about zone 1, according to the zone concept. And actually the resource that I'm using for this came from your state, Karen. The Michigan Department of Agriculture defines zone 1 as all direct food contact surfaces, and we're talking about slicers, mixers, conveyors, utensils, racks, working tables, utensils, containers, tables, brushes, rollers, sinks, knives, and even the worker's hands is considered a food contact surfaces in certain instances. When we talk about inspections, they're focusing on the presence of foodborne pathogens such as salmonella on the surface. It is usually not sampled when referring to environmental monitoring. In contrast, sampling of food contact surfaces is essential for inspectors to look for the presence of listeria, especially you are doing a ready-to-eat food product. The materials of the equipment may consist of stainless steel, plastic, rubber, aluminum. And so you want to make sure that it is a type of surface that can withstand the sanitation process and don't corrode because of the introduction of the sanitizer. Back to you, Karen.
Okay. Well, here we're going to talk about surfaces to be sanitized. Listed here are the examples of food contact surfaces that should be regularly sanitized, and these include equipment like the surfaces, of course, any equipment that you have that has a surface on it, preparation areas such as tables or countertops, any of the conveyors that once again move it along from one station to the next, bins and totes that you carry it from a field or in from wherever it's delivered to. Those totes and bins need to be also cleaned and sanitized. Packaging materials, anything that you're gonna package them need to be sanitized, and any utensils that are used in that process for those items. A reminder is Sanitation Standard Operating Procedures. The SSOP will have a step-by-step instruction for what type of detergent and sanitizer to use in your particular facility. And that step-by-step instructions will also pertain to your particular facility. So here's some approved sanitizers. The type of sanitizer used will depend on the type of surface being cleaned. Is it a, if we use the zone concept, is it where it's zone 1 where they are actually touching the surface, or a wall or a ceiling, or just in the area of the surface? So a stainless steel surface may not use the same type of sanitizer as a plastic or a rubber material would use. Different sanitizers will also be used depending on the type of food product being used or made. Forms of types of sanitation include, but are not limited to, chlorine-based sanitizers, and they are to be used for at certain concentrations, depending on the type of soil and surface being sanitized. Iodine-based sanitizer can be used over a wide range of pHs, which permits them to be mixed with acid materials. Especially in the dairy industry, iodophors may be used to clean in-place systems. They're an enclosed in-place cleaning system. A list of approved sanitizers can be found on the FDA and the EPA websites. A link to those websites are listed in your resource tab. Actually, yep, here we go. Also, proper location for single service articles. Single service items intended for one-time use, such as a paper cup, paper towels, or utensils, must be stored and handled in a manner that protects from allergen cross-contamination or cross-contact. So proper containers that prevent contamination to single service items must be in use, as well as handled and disposed of properly, such as an airtight container stored in a proper location that is away from any contaminants. Single service items must only be used one time and disposed of properly after your use.
All right, so at this time, we'd like to take the time to thank you all for joining us. A reminder, there's a complimentary fact sheet out there that goes with our with each of our webinars. So if you were here for the first one, there's a fact sheet for that one, and there's a fact sheet for this one, and there'll be the third one is already up there, but you're waiting on the actual instruction and content that comes with in order to, I guess, help it make sense for you. As far as the participants that are here now, there will be a recording of each webinar that we will share with the registrants. Once the series is done, we're gonna have it all put up on a website, and we'll share with you where that is all available to you. And so now we'll open ourselves for questions. So using the Q&A tab, that is where you want to put your questions, and Karen and I will address them. And so Stacy's going to be our facilitator for it, and then we will answer them. So we have one already in the queue, Stacy.
So the first question is, what is allergen change?
And so this is a question we get a lot now that we know that we are up from big 8 allergens to the big 9 allergens. You want to pay close attention to your ingredients as far as the ingredients you use in your product. And so and especially now I work with cottage food industry, it is now a requirement in the labeling of things. And so one way, following good manufacturing practices to make sure that you're following appropriate practices when you are changing the use of an allergen in your product. So some people have an allergen-free product and then a product that has allergens in it. It is recommended that you do some form of cleaning in between the allergen-free product and the product that does have an allergen in it.
There's another question. How would we properly sanitize plastic food containers prior to packing?
So are you saying a single use plastic container? If you are using a packaging that is plastic for your actual product, that should already come in and say that it is safe to be used with your product. So you should have a food grade container, and it should already come prepared for that packaging. And so you shouldn't have to clean it before you put your packaging in it. So you should have proper standard operating procedures set in place to make sure that that is not contaminated before you put your product in it. I know that people have sterilization process for probably glass containers and stuff, but plastic, I would use an approved vendor, and then also make sure that I haven't done anything to contaminate it before I use it. Do you want to add anything, Karen?
No, not unless you were looking at a chemical or anything that with plastic. They're going to tell you if you can use it with plastic or not if you have a chemical sanitizer. But yes, if you get a package that, just like Shannon said, that is you're going to put your item in, it should come in sealed, already ready, that's sanitized and ready for your product.
Next question. I'm a power washing company out of Kansas City who would like to get into offering services to deep clean food production facilities. Is there a certification I can get or need?
I would start a conversation up with your local health inspectors and talk to them. A couple of weeks ago, I was at our environmental health and safety conference for our state, and there were someone similar to your type of position there as a vendor. So starting that conversation with the health inspectors, the food inspectors of the state, and asking them what their requirements are and seeing if there's any certification they would suggest is what I would do for you. So apparently that guy has a relationship with our health inspectors. That's the reason why he was at that conference, serving as a vendor.
Next question. Food grade sanitizer. Can you tell us a little bit about such products?
So that really came up. So you would want to use there are, with the different sanitizers that are out there, you want to make sure that you're paying close attention to the label of them to make sure that they say that they're food grade sanitizers. I know that once COVID hit, there was the EPA came up with different resources out there and a list out there that shows different type of sanitizers, and food grade was one of the areas that you can check to see if there's a food grade sanitizer and whether it's appropriate for using in that type of setting. I know when we put up the recordings of these webinars, we'll have a resource tab that will go to that EPA list so that you can see which one is appropriate for your setting.
And I just want to add, when you do have those, and you will find those at food vendors and things like that, but also pay attention to how much you need, because a lot of times people think they need more than they actually do. They will give you measurements to use in that product so that you don't contaminate a product because you used a little too much or anything like that. So definitely read the label. Not only is it food grade, but how much to use.
It looks like there's one more question. How might food processing packaging become more sustainable? For instance, plastic packaging is the norm and prevalent, but are there any up and coming alternatives?
We have a food packaging expert here at our university, and I see a lot of times with the work that he's doing that he tries to address some of these things. So it is a conversation that is going on in the packaging world. I don't know how much it has made it to the consumer world or even the vendors world on y'all end, but I know that there's different research that is going on. And if you are interested in having more conversations about that, I could give you his contact information and you can talk to him. I think there's a few more in between too, Stacy. Here's one that say, can you still label something as allergen free if you use potential allergen in the facility and for another product. That is something we were talking about yesterday with one of my other groups. That part I would stay away from. If you know you are using allergens in your facility, you can't say that it's allergen free. I know that is what has led to a lot of different recalls with various food products, especially with the passing of the Food Safety Modernization Act of, they're starting to go back through with their food safety plan to say, oh yeah, we do have certain allergens in our products and or in our facility. So we need to make sure that we inform people about that. But no, you can't say allergen free.
Next question. You mentioned zone concept. Can you elaborate a little on what that is?
I'll let you lead, Karen, and
Okay.
I'll support.
Okay, so the zone concept is when you have direct contact with a food or a food item that you're packaging, and that is called zone 1. So it's the one that needs to be most intensely washed all the time, every time you use it, that kind of stuff, prior to wash and clean and sanitize, and then you go out from there. So if you're in a mixer and you're actually mixing something up, that's going to be zone 1. If it's just outside the table or just outside that mixer, it will be zone 2. And then as it goes out from there. So if it's the walls, they could possibly be zone 3 or 4. So it's things that are further out away from the food contact surface that you would actually have touching that, that item. So what do you want to add anything to that, Shannon?
Nope, so I guess summing it up that there's 4 zones when we talk about the zone concept. So 1 is the one that's in direct contact with the food, and 4 is in the facility but not in direct contact with the food.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the packaging person also sent another question about suggestion for plastic packaging. We would need to know more detail. So depending on what state you're in, I would suggest to reach out to your local extension specialist to get technical assistance about that, because we can't give you general recommendations about plastic packaging. We would have to know more about your product itself and your packaging. And this also could be a good time for you to have conversations with your vendor that you're getting this packaging from. So they also should be spending time to address some of your concerns as far as that goes. All right, any other questions?
Yep, looks like that we have a couple more. I currently have a small cake business. I want to open a commercial kitchen to rent to those in the baking and pastry arts industry. Where can I start my research on opening this kitchen, the requirement on keeping it clean and all needed, etc.?
Your local health department or local, in Michigan, it's an MDARD inspector. So it depends on what kind of thing you're going to produce or whatever. But yes, I would start with one of your health inspectors, because they actually are there to be your friend, to help you with these kind of things and these processes. And they will, particularly if you're designing it, because they know, and they've been in a lot of facilities, they will know what works best, how much, space you might need for certain things, or whatever it might be, and the types of cleaners, all of those things. And they will definitely help you with that. And that's where I would start, is an inspector, because they're going to know those answers.
Yeah, and they may even have, you may even can look at some of the checklists that they have for inspections for the type of food you're going to allow in your facility. We also here at Iowa State, we have a local foods group, and I kept a couple of springs ago, I kept saying, we keep having Monday morning shared use kitchen meetings. So people would come to us and ask, we want to do a shared use kitchen, what should we consider? And so they would have me there as the food safety experts. They'll have food systems people there and stuff, and we would sit down and talk through those things with those organizations.
Next question, can you give us an idea of zone 2 and 3 areas?
Okay, zone 2, I keep picturing when I'm a mixer because I was working at a facility this, or, was part of a facility this summer. And zone 1, once again, is inside the mixer, but the table that that mixer is sitting on isn't going to contain any food, really, but it might have, you might set a box of something on it or that kind of thing, that has, something for inside that, mixer. So that would be zone 2. And then zone 3 would be like the floor, things like that, Shannon.
Yeah,
For some
or
reason, I'm drawing a blank on zone 3, but the ceiling and walls I know is zone 4.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it gets a little gray area as far as what 2, because sometimes people could say zone 2 is the outside of the mixer, and then zone 3 could be the table.
Right.
So it depends on, what piece of equipment it is. The image that keeps coming in my mind when we talk about zoning, when we do the Produce Safety Alliance training, they show us the sorter that produce goes on. And so zone 1 is that round circle that the as the produce kind of lands on for sorting outside of that sorter. So the outer parts of that sorter was 2, 3 was the floor, and then 4 was the walls and windows out, in that same space.
So it's about how much that food contacts that surface is what it is, really. How likely is it to touch that surface? So.
Next question, what exactly is the reason why a material is food grade packaging material?
So research has been done on that type of materials to make sure that it doesn't leak any harmful materials or anything into food items. I use with some of the produce safety and honey work that I do, I tell them, a lot of people say sustainability, I want to reuse something. And so I tell them, you can't use materials for storage that has been used for other purposes. So reusing a barrel that may have had car oil or something else that could be harmful to humans wouldn't be useful or would lead to a chemical form of contamination to your product if you put something food grade in it. So it is important that when you're talking about your food packaging and the vendor that you use, that you're using the appropriate type of packaging. Also thinking about, I think some people, when we talk about baked items, they try to use plastic bags or something that may be more useful for confectionery, and then you might put a warm baked item in it or something like that, and then there's condensation. So there is a possibility, because that bag is not used for its appropriate use, there's some sweating that goes on. So if there's any surface contamination with a foodborne pathogen, you now are putting it in a setting that would allow it to grow, and then also that could lead to quality issues. So we on our end always run to the food safety side of things, but there also could be quality issues that could have an impact on the shelf life of your product. So that is why we say all the time to make sure that you're focusing on having food grade material, not so much for food safety and for quality purposes.
There is one that I'm going to mention, because it does say in Michigan, we do have a produce safety tax, which they are through the conservation districts, and they are free. They're confidential, and they're regular people, regulatory, yes, that people can go to as well. So yes, if you have any questions in your, it's a produce type item, you can definitely go to those techs they're not in every conservation district, but they are around the state. So thank you for that, Morgan. Any other questions that we might have?
All right. And so I keep thinking that I'm writing y'all and I'm writing the host and the panelists, but the link to our fact sheet is in the chat. So you can get it there. Also, Karen will send a follow-up email either today or tomorrow, and it'll have links to that resource. And as I said, after our November 9th webinar series, we will take those recordings, get them captioned, and get them also uploaded on the site or any other resource, a learning management resource, so that we can share it to the actual participants. And we want to thank you all again for joining us for our webinar series, and we'll see you on November 9th.
Thank you.